From a flicker of candlelight in 1789 to the glare of modern screens in the West Wing, every president has held the pen. Executive orders not passed by Congress, but etched into law by command. Some shaped history. Some sparked controversy. Others were forgotten. Until now. This is where we break them down. Every signature, every shift in power, every consequence still felt today. From Washington to Biden, welcome to Executive Order Watch.
Democracy, we live for it. For democracy, we fight for it. For democracy, we've died for it. And for democracy, we watch it. This is Executive Order Watch.
2003 was the year things changed for good. America had spent the past year building a defense, securing the homeland, forming new alliances, preparing for whatever came next. But in 2003, we stopped bracing and we started moving. I made the decision to lead this nation into Iraq. It wasn't easy. It wasn't popular in every corner, but it was, in my judgment, necessary. We had intelligence, shared by many of our allies, that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction. We had a dictator who defied UN resolutions and slaughtered his own people. We had a threat that we could not ignore. And I wasn't going to wait for a mushroom cloud before I acted. In March of 2003, Operation Iraqi Freedom began. Our forces moved fast. In weeks, Saddam's regime collapsed. The statue fell in Baghdad. The world watched America follow through on its word. But war isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of a long road. I knew rebuilding Iraq would take time, cost lives, and test our will. But I believed, and still believe, that liberty is the birthright of every man and woman, and tyranny must not go unchallenged. 2003 was also the year we started building a new architecture of freedom. In Eastern Europe, in Africa, across the Middle East, we expanded partnerships, encouraged reform, and strengthened our alliances. We passed the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, which would go on to save millions of lives in Africa. That didn't grab headlines like Iraq, but it defined how we governed, with compassion and boldness side by side. Back home, we restructured our intelligence community, modernized Medicare with a prescription drug benefit, and pushed forward with tax relief to stimulate an economy still wounded from recession and terror. I governed that year with resolve, with clarity, with a firm belief that America must lead, not follow, that security must be built, not wished for, that freedom must be defended, not just preached. There were critics, there was division, but there was also courage. From the troops on the ground, to the families who stood by them, to the first Iraqis who voted, who testified, who stood tall after decades of fear. My executive orders that year, they were just part of the bigger picture. Each one played a role, some about war, some about peace, some about protecting the homeland, and some about lifting people up. And we'll get into those next, because when you look closely at what was signed, you see the strategy, you see the values, you see the mission. So stay tuned. We're about to dive into the executive orders of 2003 because every signature tells a story and every story matters. Executive Order 13,283, establishing the Office of Global Communications on January 21st, 2003. Executive Order 13,284, Amendment of Executive Orders and other actions in connection with the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security on January 23rd, 2003. Executive Order 13,285, President's Council on Service and Civic Participation on January 29th, 2003. Executive Order 13,286, Amendment of Executive Orders and other actions in connection with the transfer of certain functions to the Secretary of Homeland Security on February 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,287, Preserve America on March 3rd, 2003. Executive Order 13,288, Blocking Property of Persons undermining democratic processes or institutions in Zimbabwe on March 6th, 2003. Executive Order 13,289, establishing the Global War on Terrorism medals on March 12th, 2003. Executive Order 13,290, confiscating and vesting certain Iraqi property poverty on March 20th, 2003, Executive Order 13,291, further adjustment of certain rates of pay on March 21, 2003, Executive Order 13,292, further amendment to Executive Order 12958, as amended classified national security information on March 25, 2003, Executive Order 13,293, amendment to Executive Order 10,448, establishing the National Defense Service Medal on March 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,294, regulations relating to hazardous duty incentive pay, aviation career incentive pay, and submarine duty incentive pay on March 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,295, revised list of quarantinable communicable diseases on April 4, 2003. Executive Order 13,296, amendments to Executive Order 130,045, protection of children from environmental health risks and safety risks on April 18, 2003. Executive Order 13,297, applying the Federal Physicians Comparability Allowance Amendments of 2000 to participants in the Foreign Service Retirement and Disability System, the Foreign Service Pension System, and the Central Intelligence Agency Retirement and Disability System on April 23, 2003. Executive Order 13,298, termination of emergency with respect to the actions and policies of UNITA and revocation of related executive orders on May 6, 2003. Executive Order 13,299, interagency group on insular areas on May 12, 2003. Executive Order 13,300, facilitating the administration of justice in the federal courts on May 9, 2003. Executive Order 13,301, increasing the number of members on the Intelligence Oversight Board on May 14, 2003. Executive Order 13,302, amending Executive Order 13,212, actions to expedite energy-related projects on May 15, 2003. Executive Order 13,304, protecting the Development Fund for Iraq and certain other property in which Iraq has an interest on May 22, 2003. Executive Order 13,305, termination of emergencies with respect to Yugoslavia and modification of Executive Order 1321-9 of June 26, 2001 on May 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,305, extension of the President's Information Technology Advisory Committee and the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology on May 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,306, establishing the Bob Hope American Patriot Award on May 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,307, European Central Bank on May 29, 2003. Executive Order 13,308, further amendment to Executive Order 12580, as amended, Superfund implementation on June 20, 2003. Executive Order 13,309, amendments to Executive Order 12994, and renaming the President's Committee on Mental Retardation as the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities on July 25, 2003. Executive Order 13,310, blocking property of the government of Burma and prohibiting certain transactions on July 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,311, Homeland Security information sharing on July 29, 2003. Executive Order 13,312, implementing the Clean Diamond Trade Act on July 29, 2003. Executive Order 13,313, delegation of certain congressional reporting functions on July 31, 2003. Executive Order 13,314, waiver under the Trade Act of 1974 with respect to Turkmenistan on August 8, 2003. Executive Order 13,315, blocking property of the former Iraqi regime, its senior officials and their family members, and taking certain other actions on August 28, 2003. Executive Order 13,316, continuance of certain federal advisory committees on September 17, 2003. Executive Order 13,317, volunteers for prosperity on September 25, 2003. Executive Order 13,318, Presidential Management Fellows Program on November 21, 2003. Executive Order 13,319, amendment to Executive Order 13,183, establishment of the President's Task Force on Puerto Rico's status on December 3, 2003. Executive Order 13,320, closing of Executive executive departments and agencies on December 9, 2003, Executive Order, 13,321 appointments during national emergency on December 17, 2003, Executive Order, 13,322 adjustments of certain rates of pay on December 30, 2003, Executive Order, 13,323 assignment of functions relating to arrivals in and departures from the United States on December 30th, 2003. 2003 was a consequential year.
Colleen's Pizza, where we deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Yeah, hi. Is Seymour there?
Oh, Seymour. I think he might be busy making our special pies. But hey, why not swing by the pizzeria? We've got a pie with your name on it. Anything else I can help you with?
I was looking for Seymour Butts.
I see. Well, if you're looking for Seymour Butts, he might be hiding behind a pepperoni slice. Anything else I can do for you today?
No, that's it.
Hi, I'm Terrence, a marketing professional with a passion for helping your business grow smarter and faster. Here at DaBomb Digital Media, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, we specialize in bringing your vision to life. Whether you're launching your first website or reimagining your entire digital presence, we've got you covered. From modern website design and search engine optimization to setting up your own AI-powered agency tools, we deliver innovative solutions that keep you ahead of the curve. Ready to unlock your business's full potential? Let's build something remarkable together. For more information, visit our YouTube channel. Just search DaBomb Digital Media on YouTube and start exploring tips, success stories, and everything you need to elevate your brand.
Was a consequential year.
2003, it was a year marked by war, diplomacy, upheaval, and a presidency operating at full throttle in the wake of 9/11. President George W. Bush had begun reshaping American foreign policy the moment the towers fell. But by 2003, those ideas became action. That March, the United States invaded Iraq under the justification that Saddam Hussein posed a grave and gathering threat to the world. Whether you agreed with the intelligence or questioned the urgency, America went in. The regime was toppled quickly, but the aftermath was anything but simple. The war in Iraq consumed the headlines, but beneath the surface, dozens of executive orders were issued, each one with its own role in directing how this country operated, how it reacted, and how it governed during this volatile time, from blocking the assets of former Iraqi officials, to modifying how classified information was handled, to laying the legal groundwork for homeland security as we know it. President Bush signed more than 40 executive orders in 2003. Some were bold declarations of American power, others were technical moves, reinforcing the new bureaucracy of national defense and counterterrorism. But here's what matters. They didn't just affect 2003. They still affect us today. Let's look at the broader impact. EO 13,292 changed the rules on classified information, expanding the executive's ability to control and restrict access. That affected not just national security, but the press, the public, and future transparency. EO 13,290 gave the U.S. power to seize and control Iraqi property, marking a new phase in post-war economic reconstruction. That executive order helped finance the transition in Iraq, but also raised questions about oversight and international law. EO 13,303 protected the Development Fund for Iraq from legal challenges, effectively shielding U.S. companies doing business there. It encouraged investment, but also drew criticism for giving corporations too much cover during wartime operations. EO 13,286 and EO 13,284 continued the massive administrative shift toward homeland security, rewriting countless prior executive orders to hand functions to the newly created Department of Homeland Security. Together, these orders reflect something deeper about the presidency in 2003. It was fast, it was forceful, and it wasn't waiting for permission. Whether you agreed with the policies or not, President Bush was using every lever available to him, military, legal, economic, and bureaucratic, to shape a post-9/11 world. Now, let's put this in the context of what was happening in the world that year. Global events of 2003. The U.S. invades Iraq in March, beginning a war that would reshape the Middle East and U.S. foreign policy for decades. Saddam Hussein is captured in December. North Korea withdraws from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, escalating tensions across Asia. The European Union expands, preparing to welcome 10 new countries the following year. The world faces the outbreak of SARS, testing global public health systems. America-only events. The Department of Homeland Security officially begins operation. NASA loses the Space Shuttle Columbia, a national tragedy that halts human spaceflight. The Medicare Prescription Drug Act is passed, one of the largest expansions of the social safety net in decades. Massive blackouts affect the Northeast, highlighting vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure. The Bush administration begins planning for No Child Left Behind implementation across school systems nationwide. So what do we take from all this? 2003 was a year of hard choices, swift decisions, and deep consequences. The executive orders of that year were more than signatures. They were instruments of war, diplomacy, reconstruction, and domestic transformation. Some strengthened our position, some overreached. All of them reflected a presidency pushing the boundaries of executive power, and now it's time we look at them one by one, because behind each executive order is a story. Behind each story is a lesson. Next up, the top 10 executive orders of 2003, evaluated in full. Let's take a closer look at what shaped the world then and how it still shapes the world now. The year 2003 was a year that changed the trajectory of this country and much of the world. President George W. Bush was in the second act of a presidency transformed by terror and defined by war. This was the year we invaded Iraq, the year we captured Saddam Hussein, the year the Department of Homeland Security opened its doors and reshaped how we think about national safety. And while the headlines focused on tanks and tribunals, beneath it all, something quieter but just as powerful was happening. Executive power was expanding. In 2003, President Bush issued more than 40 executive orders, a surge of presidential action across defense, diplomacy, economics, and homeland policy. Let's talk about how those orders affected that year and how they continue to shape our present. EO 13,286 and 13,284, those weren't just administrative orders. They rewrote the internal machinery of our government. They handed over key responsibilities to the newly created Department of Homeland Security, reorganizing decades of protocol overnight. We still live in that architecture today. Every TSA line, every red alert, every cyber response. That system was born through executive action in 2003. EO 13,292 changed how we classify national security information. It gave more power to classify material, expanding the secrecy authority of the executive branch. That decision still impacts what the public can and cannot know about how our government operates. EO 13,303 and 13,290 dealt with Iraq's assets and infrastructure, giving U.S. companies immunity while investing in reconstruction and seizing Saddam's assets to fund stabilization. That played a big role in shaping post-war Iraq and also in triggering debates over war profiteering and accountability that still echo in our politics. And EO 13,295, quietly signed in April, updated the list of communicable diseases subject to federal quarantine. We didn't talk about it much then, but years later, in the era of COVID, that single order became part of the legal scaffolding for public health decisions in a national emergency. These weren't just orders for 2003. They were time capsules, policies planted that grew into the government we live under today. Now let's take a moment to look at what else was happening in the world that year. Major global events of 2003. The Iraq War begins in March, with the U.S. leading a coalition to remove Saddam Hussein from power. North Korea withdraws from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, raising alarms across Asia. The world confronts the first deadly outbreak of SARS, a global health crisis that tested the limits of international coordination. The European Union prepares for its largest expansion, symbolizing a new era of global integration. China sends its first human into space, marking a new global space race. Major U.S.-only events. Saddam Hussein is captured in December, delivering a symbolic victory for the Bush administration. The Department of Homeland Security becomes fully operational, officially launching a new era of domestic intelligence and emergency coordination. NASA's Columbia disaster shocks the nation and halts manned space missions. A massive blackout in August leaves over 50 million people across the Northeast in the dark. Congress passes the Medicare Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act, the largest expansion of Medicare since its creation. Each executive order that year fit within this context. Some streamlined government, some empowered war policy, some reshaped federal responsibilities, others laid the groundwork for controversies that would emerge years later on secrecy, on surveillance, on corporate power and foreign policy. You don't always see the impact of an executive order when it's signed, but you see it years later on the tarmac, in the budget, in a courtroom, in the lives of soldiers and civilians alike. So now it's time to dig in. We're about to break down the top 10 executive orders of 2003. We'll examine what they did, who they helped, what they changed, and how their impact lives on in 2025 and beyond. Because if you want to understand the power of the presidency, don't just watch the speeches, read the orders. Let's get into it. Here's a detailed breakdown of the top 10 executive orders of 2003 signed by President George W. Bush, evaluated by their impact in 2003, lasting legacy, and historical weight. Number 1, Executive Order 13,286, Amendment of Executive Orders and Other Actions in connection with the transfer of certain functions to the Secretary of Homeland Security. Signed February 28, 2003, Overview. This monumental order modified or revoked over 100 previous executive orders to accommodate the newly created Department of Homeland Security, DHS. It realigned responsibilities from multiple federal agencies into DHS, including FEMA, the Secret Service, and parts of the INS. Impact in 2003, it was the legal cement that held together one of the largest reorganizations of the federal government in American history. It enabled DHS to hit the ground running just weeks after its official launch. Lasting effect. Every modern homeland security protocol, airports, cyber defense, disaster response, flows through the framework this EO helped establish. It reshaped how America responds to internal threats. Number 2, Executive Order 13,292. Further amendment to Executive Order 12,958 as amended classified national security information, signed March 25, 2003, Overview. Expanded the President's and Vice President's authority to classify national security information. It also loosened guidelines on automatic declassification, increasing executive control over sensitive material. Impact in 2003. Allowed tighter control of information during the ramp-up and launch of the Iraq War. Critics saw it as a rollback of transparency reforms from the post-Cold War era. Lasting effect. Set the tone for future classification battles, including issues surrounding torture memos, drone programs, and whistleblowing. Eventually revoked by EO 13,526 under President Obama. Number 3, Executive Order 13,303, protecting the Development Fund for Iraq and certain other property in which Iraq has an interest, signed May 22, 2003. Overview. Shielded Iraqi oil interests and U.S. entities working on reconstruction from legal liability. It aimed to stabilize economic rebuilding efforts in post-invasion Iraq. Impact in 2003 enabled rapid deployment of contractors and oil infrastructure rebuilding, but sparked outcry about unchecked corporate power in war zones. Lasting effect became a central example cited in debates on cronyism and profiteering in U.S. foreign policy. Legal shields like this still exist in modern military ventures. Number 4, Executive Order 13,290, confiscating and vesting certain Iraqi property. Signed March 20th, 2003. Overview. Allowed the U.S. government to seize the assets of Saddam Hussein and his regime. These funds were redirected to assist in Iraqi reconstruction. Impact in 2003. This order coincided with the very day the invasion began. It symbolized the U.S. intention to not just remove Saddam, but to rebuild Iraq from the inside out. Lasting effect. Funded early stabilization projects. Also became a model for targeting rogue state leaders through financial sanctions and seizure authority. Number 5, Executive Order 13,315, blocking property of the former Iraqi regime, its senior officials and their family members. Signed August 28, 2003. Overview: this EO expanded financial sanctions to include more individuals tied to Saddam's regime. It gave the Treasury Department power to act against a wide circle of collaborators. Impact in 2003, used as a tool to dismantle Ba'athist networks and prevent exiled elites from funding insurgency or escaping justice. Lasting effect, strengthened the use of financial warfare in foreign policy. Modern sanctions programs from Iran to Russia draw directly from this precedent. Number 6, Executive Order 13,284, Amendment of Executive Orders in connection with the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security. Signed January 23, 2003. Overview: along with EO 13,286, this EO adjusted earlier executive orders to reflect the structural creation of DHS, transferring legal authorities to the new department. Impact in 2003. Essential to legally enable DHS employees to begin work, issue guidance, and assume responsibilities. Supported rapid consolidation of border, customs, and emergency services. Lasting effect. Became a blueprint for institutional integration following federal agency restructuring. Helped define post-9/11 governance. Number 7, Executive Order 13,295, Revised List of Quarantinable Communicable Diseases, signed April 4, 2003. Overview: updated the list of diseases that allow the federal government to impose quarantine. It added SARS to the list in response to global outbreaks. Impact in 2003. Reflected early public health lessons learned during SARS and fears of bioterrorism. Enhanced coordination between CDC and federal authorities. Lasting effect. Became a foundational reference during COVID-19 and Ebola outbreaks. Updated again in later administrations, but this EO was the starting point. Number 8, Executive Order 13,311, Homeland Security Information Sharing. Signed July 29, 2003. Overview: encouraged agencies to share classified Homeland Security information with local and state governments. Addressed pre-9/11 intelligence failures caused by siloed data. Impact in 2003. Improved situational awareness across multiple levels of government. Marked the beginning of fusion centers and integrated threat response systems. Lasting effect, still cited as the basis for intelligence cooperation protocols, help shape how we detect and respond to domestic threats today. Number 9, Executive Order 13,283, establishing the Office of Global Communications, signed January 21, 2003. Overview: created an office tasked with coordinating international communications and messaging by the United States government, particularly regarding the war on terror. Impact in 2003, intended to shape global opinion during the Iraq War, sought to unify U.S. messaging across embassies, allies, and media platforms. Lasting effect, short-lived office, but an early attempt at what is now called strategic communications in diplomatic and defense circles. Number 10, Executive Order 13,317, Volunteers for Prosperity. Signed September 25, 2003. Overview: launched a public-private initiative encouraging skilled American professionals to volunteer abroad in health, education, and economic development. Impact in 2003. Complemented military operations with soft power diplomacy, especially in post-conflict or fragile nations. Lasting effect: became part of broader efforts to balance military presence with humanitarian outreach, reflected a shift toward whole-of-government foreign policy. Closing note: these 10 executive orders weren't just pieces of paper. They were acts of war, tools of peace, and blueprints for the future. They show us a presidency defined by speed, scale, and a sweeping use of executive power. Some of these orders made America safer. Some stirred long debates about transparency, overreach, and accountability.
Some write history with blood, some with laws. But the sharpest stroke comes from the pen. Executive power ain't just a tool. It's a weapon wielded by the few, affecting the many. They sign it, we live it. They order it, we obey it. Here, watching, digging, remembering. From the plantation to the proclamation, from internment camps to civil rights stands, from surveillance laws to student loan draws. Order can change your life, and you might not even know it, but now you do. So stay locked in, stay woke, stay sharp. We ain't just talking about power, we tracking it. Executive Order Watch, and we ain't blinking.